Welcome to Watch the Book. Today we present The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, published in 1925. In the spring of 1922, I, Nick Carraway, came east to New York to learn the bond business, leaving the familiar Midwest behind for the promise of a new beginning. I rented a small, overlooked bungalow in West Egg, Long Island, a place that was home to the newly rich, whose mansions were grand but lacked the pedigree of the neighboring East Egg. My house was dwarfed by the colossal mansion next door, a sprawling imitation of a Norman Hôtel de Ville. It was the home of a mysterious Mr. Gatsby, whom I had not yet met. One warm evening, I drove across the bay to East Egg for dinner with my cousin, Daisy Buchanan, and her husband, Tom, a man whose immense wealth and physical power were evident in his every move. Inside their magnificent Georgian colonial home, a breeze billowed through the room. Daisy and her friend Jordan Baker reclined on a couch, their white dresses fluttering like anchored balloons. Daisy's voice was a captivating melody, low and thrilling, full of a charm that promised exciting things were always just about to happen. It was a voice impossible to forget. During dinner, the telephone rang. The call was for Tom, and from Jordan Baker's knowing glance, I learned the uncomfortable truth. Tom had a mistress in New York. Later, alone with Daisy on the porch, she spoke with a cynical sadness about the world, confessing that she hoped her daughter would grow up to be a beautiful little fool. As I drove away from their strained and glittering world, I was left with a sense of confusion and disgust. It seemed Tom's egotism and Daisy's insincerity were a world apart from my own value. Arriving home, I saw a figure emerge from the shadow of my neighbor's mansion. It was Mr. Gatsby himself, standing alone and regarding the stars with a quiet intensity. As I watched, Gatsby stretched his arms out toward the dark water in a strange, trembling gesture. I looked across the bay and saw nothing but a single, distant green light. On another day, Tom insisted I join him in New York. We stopped in the Valley of Ashes, a desolate industrial wasteland watched over by the giant, fading eyes of an old billboard. Here, in a grim garage, I met Tom's mistress, Myrtle Wilson. She was a woman of crude vitality, and Tom arranged for her to join us in the city on the next train. We gathered in a small, overfurnished apartment Tom kept for the affair. Myrtle's sister, Catherine, and a couple named McKee joined us for a party fueled by whiskey and gossip. The afternoon dissolved into a hazy, drunken affair. As Myrtle grew more audacious, she began to shout Daisy's name in defiance of Tom, taunting him repeatedly. With a short, deft movement, Tom's open hand struck her across the face, breaking her nose. The party ended abruptly in a mess of bloody towels and a long, broken wail of pain. One evening, I attended one of Gatsby's legendary parties. His gardens were filled with music, champagne, and guests who arrived, often uninvited, like moths to a brilliant flame. Amid the swirling crowds and whispered rumors about our host, that he was a spy or had killed a man, I searched for Gatsby, feeling out of place in the spectacular chaos. In a high Gothic library, I encountered a stout, owl-eyed man, marveling that Gatsby's books were real, with actual pages. He called my host a regular Belasco for his thoroughness. Later, I struck up a conversation with a man who recognized me from the war. To my astonishment, he introduced himself with a reassuring smile. He was J. Gatsby. Jordan Baker was then summoned for a private meeting with Gatsby. When she returned, she was stunned, telling me she had just heard something truly amazing. Days later, Jordan revealed Gatsby's story to me. 5 years earlier, in Louisville, she had seen Daisy with a young officer she was madly in love with. That officer was J. Gatsby. Before he left for the war, they were deeply in love. But while he was away at Oxford after the armistice, Daisy, feeling the pressure of her world, married the wealthy Tom Buchanan. The night before her wedding, Daisy got drunk holding a letter from Gatsby. She cried, wanting to call it off, but her family calmed her, and she married Tom the next day. Gatsby, Jordan explained, had bought his magnificent house for the sole purpose of being directly across the bay from Daisy, hoping she might one day wander into one of his parties. And so Gatsby's grand request was a simple one. He wanted me to invite Daisy to my cottage for tea so that he could come over, as if by chance, and see her again. I agreed. That night Gatsby's house was ablaze with light, not for a party, but simply because he was glancing into some of the rooms in his nervous excitement. On the appointed day, a torrential rain fell. Gatsby, pale with anxiety, arrived early, having already sent a man to cut my lawn and filled my small house with a greenhouse of flowers. When Daisy's car pulled into the drive, Gatsby panicked and fled out the back door, only to reappear at the front moments later, soaked and feigning perfect composure. The reunion was excruciatingly awkward. Gatsby, leaning against my mantelpiece, nearly knocked over a defunct clock, his hands trembling as he struggled to speak. I left them alone, and when I returned half an hour later, the sun was out and the atmosphere had transformed. Daisy's face was smeared with tears, and Gatsby was literally glowing with joy. He invited us to his mansion. As we walked the grounds, he confessed it took him just 3 years to earn the money to buy it, a correction to his earlier story of inherited wealth. Gatsby gave Daisy a tour of his home, revaluing every object based on the look in her eyes. He seemed dazed, as if her presence made his vast possessions suddenly unreal. In his bedroom, he began tossing his collection of beautiful, expensive shirts onto a table. Overwhelmed, Daisy buried her face in the vibrant pile and began to cry stormily. From his window, Gatsby pointed to the green light at the end of her dock. He seemed to realize that its colossal significance had now vanished forever, replaced by the woman beside him. I learned Gatsby's true history much later. He was born James Gatz, the son of poor farm people, but he sprang from a platonic conception of himself, inventing the persona of J. Gatsby. At 17, he met a millionaire yachtsman named Dan Cody. For 5 years, he sailed with Cody, learning the ways of the wealthy until Cody's mistress cheated him out of his inheritance. One Sunday, Tom Buchanan arrived at Gatsby's house on horseback with some friends. Gatsby was visibly flustered by Tom's presence, his attempt to be a cordial host falling flat. The following Saturday, Tom, now deeply suspicious, accompanied Daisy to one of Gatsby's parties. His presence cast a harsh, oppressive quality over the entire evening. Daisy was appalled by the raw energy and new money vulgarity of West Egg. She wasn't having a good time, a fact that deeply disturbed Gatsby after she and Tom had left. She didn't like it, Gatsby told me, his dream shaken. He insisted that he could repeat the past, that he could fix everything just the way it was 5 years before. Gatsby fired his staff to prevent gossip, as Daisy now came over every afternoon. The grand parties ceased, and an air of secrecy fell over the great house. On the hottest day of the summer, Daisy invited Gatsby, Nick, and Jordan to lunch. The tension in the room was unbearable as Daisy and Gatsby openly revealed their feelings for one another. "You always look so cool," Daisy told Gatsby, her voice full of love. At that moment, Tom understood everything. His mouth opened and he stared at them, astounded. Tom insisted they all go to the city. He belligerently arranged for Gatsby to take his coupe, while he would drive Gatsby's magnificent yellow car. On the way, Tom stopped at Wilson's garage for gas. From an upstairs window, Myrtle saw Tom in the yellow car, and seeing Jordan beside him, her face filled with jealous terror. George Wilson appeared unwell, telling Tom he had discovered something was wrong and that he and Myrtle were moving west. He was sick with his own parallel discovery. The tense party reconvened in a stifling hotel suite at the plaza. The argument that had been simmering all day finally erupted into a full-blown confrontation. "Your wife doesn't love you," Gatsby told Tom. "She's never loved you, she loves me." Gatsby demanded that Daisy admit she had never loved her husband. Under Tom's intense pressure, Daisy faltered. "Oh, you want too much," she cried to Gatsby. "I love you now, isn't that enough? I did love him once, but I loved you too." The confession shattered Gatsby's dream. Seizing his advantage, Tom exposed Gatsby as a bootlegger and a criminal, revealing the sordid truth behind his vast fortune. Daisy, terrified, withdrew completely. Her courage was gone. With magnanimous scorn, Tom sent her and Gatsby home together in the yellow car, certain the affair was over. As they drove through the Valley of Ashes, Myrtle Wilson, having had a violent fight with her husband, saw the familiar yellow car approaching and ran out into the road. Daisy, who was driving to steady her nerves, was unable to react in time. The car struck Myrtle, killing her instantly, and without stopping, sped away into the darkness. Later, as Tom, Nick, and Jordan drove past the garage, they saw the crowd. Inside, they found Myrtle's body. Wilson, deranged with grief, kept repeating, "Oh my God." A bystander told the police that the death car was a yellow car. Wilson cried out that he knew what kind of car it was, his mind already set on a target. Tom, realizing the danger, quickly told Wilson that the yellow car he had been driving earlier was not his, and that he hadn't seen it all afternoon. Back at East Egg, I found Gatsby hiding in the bushes. He told me Daisy had been driving, but that he was going to take the blame. He intended to wait all night to protect her. I crept up to the house and peered into the pantry window. Daisy and Tom were sitting at the kitchen table, not happy, but not unhappy. They were conspiring together. I told Gatsby to go home, but he refused, determined to keep his vigil. I left him standing there in the moonlight, watching over a house where the dream was already over. I couldn't sleep and went to Gatsby's at dawn. He was still waiting, clutching at the last hope that Daisy would call. He told me the rest of his story of how he had first loved her. He had let her believe he was from the same social strata, a man who could care for her. He felt married to her, and when he lost her to Tom, he lost the best part of his life. At the garage, George Wilson, maddened by grief, showed his neighbor a new, expensive dog leash he had found, proof to him that Myrtle had a secret life, a wealthy lover. Staring out at the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, Wilson told Michaelis, "God sees everything." Believing the driver of the yellow car was his wife's murderer, he set out to find him. Tom had told Wilson who owned the car. After hours of searching, Wilson found his way to West Egg. He walked up to Gatsby's house, his mind twisted by a singular, vengeful purpose. Gatsby decided to use his pool for the first time all summer. As he floated on a mattress, waiting for a call that would never come, he must have felt he had lost the old warm world. The chauffeur heard the shots. We rushed to the pool to find Gatsby's body floating on the mattress, a thin red circle traced in the water. The Holocaust was complete. A little way off in the grass, we found Wilson's body as well. The police and reporters descended, and the newspapers painted a grotesque and untrue story of the events. I found myself on Gatsby's side and alone. I called Daisy, but a butler informed me that she and Tom had gone away, leaving no address, no word, no flower. I tried to contact Meyer Wolfsheim, but he refused to get involved, sending a letter full of shallow sentiment but offering no support for the man he claimed to have made. A telegram arrived from a Henry C. Gatz of Minnesota. It was Gatsby's father, a solemn, helpless old man, his grief mixed with an awed pride at his son's magnificent house. He showed me a photograph of the house and a ragged copy of a book from Gatsby's boyhood, with a detailed schedule for self-improvement written inside. Jimmy was bound to get ahead. I tried to gather mourners for the funeral, but no one would come. Klipspringer, the boarder, called only to ask for a pair of tennis shoes he had left behind. The day of the funeral was cold and rainy. A procession of 3 cars went to the cemetery. The hearse, a limousine with me and Mr. Gatz, and a wagon with a few servants. As we stood at the grave, one other person appeared, splashing through the rain. It was the owl-eyed man from the library. "The poor son of a bitch," he said, wiping his glasses. After Gatsby's death, the East was haunted for me, distorted beyond correction. I decided it was time for me to leave, to go back home to the familiar stability of the Midwest. Before I left, I had to see Jordan Baker one last time to end things cleanly. She told me she was engaged to another man, accusing me of being just as careless as she was. I ran into Tom Buchanan in New York. He was not remorseful. He told me he was the one who pointed Wilson toward Gatsby. He had it coming to him, he said defiant. Tom and Daisy were careless people. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness and let other people clean up the mess. On my last night, I went over to Gatsby's huge, incoherent failure of a house. I erased an obscene word a boy had scrawled on his white steps, a final, futile gesture of loyalty. I went down to the beach and looked across the Sound, thinking of the old island as it must have seemed to the first Dutch sailors, a fresh green breast of the New World. I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. His dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that the dream was already behind him, back in the vast obscurity of the past, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light. The orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther. And one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. If you were captivated by this story, subscribe to Watch the Book for more literary classics brought to life. We explore the world's greatest narratives every week.